Hey Garth, good to be back.
Jason, always a pleasure, as always a pleasure.
Today's podcast is amazing. But before we get
It's
into it, I got a quick
supercharged.
question
It's
for you.
supercharged.
Tell me, Garth. I presume that you've been on a road trip or two in your life. Tell me about your favorite road trip.
Oh, my favorite road trip. Oh God, there have been a lot. I used to work at Brentwood College School on Vancouver Island,
Right?
and at the end of my first year, two of my best friends, Andrew and Sean, they flew out so the three of us could drive back together, and it was an amazing couple of days of just fun, silliness, connections. Um, yeah, seeing the country. Now I'm a bit of like a history nerd,
Yep.
so I was really excited for them, and I was like, "Hey guys, I actually have the CDs of Lewis and Clark Adventures." That basically went over like a lead balloon. But we listened to that for a little bit. We spent good time, saw the country. Yeah, it was amazing. What about you, Jason? Any road trips to speak of?
Well, my favorite one was Canadian as well. I drove with some friends from Calgary to Nova Scotia on a exploration of all the microbreweries across Canada once. And similarly, we had a book on that trip, was great Canadian speeches, and to pass time, we would read them and impersonate the person doing them. And did I ever learn a lot about Canada during that time? But today's podcast, Garth, I could talk about that
Yes.
forever, but today's podcast is, like you just explained, it's a bit of a road trip, where you develop wisdom and friendships and understanding.
Yeah.
And our guest just wrote a book about a road trip that he was on. Do you want to throw to the guest, Garth, and let people know who we're
Yeah,
talking
sure.
to today?
Well, yeah, so his book has been out for quite some time. It's called #EdJourney, and that's how Grant Lichtman, our guest, met. And he's written quite a few since then. And the one that we're looking at today is Thrive, and it builds off of all of the learning from that road trip, and it takes all the business parts and all the change leadership parts of business that we've learned and we apply to all these different industries. And this book, Thrive, applies them to the educational context and educational leaders. It is supercharged, folks. You're going to love it. We hope you enjoy.
Enjoy the show.
With Garth and Jason, we dive right in, breaking down Ted's world. Let's begin from AFC, Richmond Spiel to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted, we'll learn and grow.
Hey there, Lasso and Leadership fans. Welcome back to Lassoing Leadership, the podcast where we have used the hit series Ted Lasso to explore the kindest, compassionate, most inspiring ways to lead. I'm Garth Nichols, your host, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jason Rogers.
It is great to be here, Garth, and this season we've taken a bold step and taken the backseat to some incredible authors that we know. We've had the privilege to work with and have just said yes to the two of us in calling out and saying we'd love to have you on this podcast. And they are here to talk to us about a kinder, more compassionate way to lead through their literature, through their word, skills, and dispositions.
Yeah, and today is wicked awesome for me because we have a very special guest, Grant Lichtman, who is an author. He's an author of Thrive. That's the book we're going to be looking at today, How Schools Will Win the Educational Revolution. But he's so much more. He brings a wealth of experience in educational leadership, in thought leadership around education as well. He has a deep commitment to fostering innovation within the school community.
That's right, Garth. And I'm going to keep this brief because I want to get to our guest as soon as possible. But let me do just a couple words on Grant. Grant has been very active in educational leadership and throughout over the last 25 years. And I've heard him speak at the NAIS conference and CASE conferences. And I have to say, Grant, that was an absolute highlight, particularly this year in Nashville when you spoke about your forthcoming book. You're always thought-provoking and engaging. But Garth, you've worked really closely with Grant over the time. So why don't I pass to you quickly before we get right into it with Grant?
Yes. So not just an incredible author, speaker, thought leader, but also someone who I can call a friend. When Grant published his book, hashtag Ed Journey, which, if you haven't, it's a must read. It really caught my attention, so much so, and this is the short version of the story, I just basically tweeted at him and said, if you like what's happening in the US, what you've seen on your Ed journey, 65 days, Grant, I think it was, somewhere around there, visiting 89 different schools. I said, if you like what's happening in the US, you should see what's happening up in Canada. And well, if he didn't respond and say, tell me more, classic Grant. And that was the first step to our partnership that saw me, him, and Justin Medved, a dear friend and colleague, another incredible educator in Toronto, to us running a program together for CASE called the Strategic Change Accelerator. We ran that for a number of years. I learned so much working with Grant, so much working with CASE on that project. It was really incredible. His insights on leadership, especially his emphasis on embracing change and innovation in education, and his compelling reasons why. It's inspirational. So, Grant, welcome to the pod. Please introduce yourself a little bit more, because I know there's more to uncover here, but welcome to the pod. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you both so much for having me. And it's first time ever meeting Jason, but it's wonderful to see you, Garth, again. And it's hard to imagine when I'm seeing you without Justin here.
I know.
Three of us are kind of the band
Yeah.
together. And thank you so much for having me. I miss being up there north of the border with all my Canadian friends and colleagues. For those who don't know me, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in K-12 education now for, right on 30 plus years, and really worked at a large independent school for 15 years, wore a number of different hats in senior administration. And then since 2012, after my Ed Journey trip around the country, been fortunate to visit, work with, something around, 275, 300 schools around the U.S., Canada, and around the world to some extent, primarily just helping education communities, educators and their communities figure out, what the world is demanding of them, what the future looks like, and how do we get there. And so it's been a remarkable journey over the last decade and a half or so of work, been able to publish several books about what I've learned. And I learned just as much from folks like you and Justin and all my colleagues north of the border. And I'm just happy to learn from everybody and then be able to share that out in the books that I write.
Yeah.
Amazing, Grant. This is like doing an interview with somebody who's got my dream job, that opportunity to drive around and then write and tell stories and books about these experiences. Grant, I'm absolutely beside myself the fact that we have you on this podcast today. So thank you for joining us. And I'll jump in with the very first question, then I'll pass it over to Garth in a little bit. But let's dive right in. So in Thrive, one of your newer books, you discuss the rapidly evolving landscape of education and the necessity of schools to adapt. Can you take a minute and elaborate on the key factors driving this need for change in schools? What are you seeing in the landscape, that requires this change, and how do we adapt to it? Two parts to that question.
Well, I'll handle the first part, and there's so many different factors, but they're really two big ones. And the first one is something that we've been recognizing for the last probably three plus decades. And for those of us who still think that it's news that the world is changing rapidly and that the world now demands things of our graduating students differently than they did 30 years ago, boy, that train left the station a long time ago. That shouldn't be a surprise, but in fact, to some people it is. But that's really the fact of the matter, is that what is demanded and required of our students, the skill sets that they need in order to be successful in their jobs and in their lives, and being able to adapt to a rapidly changing world, are a very different set of knowledge and skills than, in some cases, than were required certainly when I was in school, when you were in school. So that's the big one. The world is just the world is just restructuring, and we need to respond to it. The second one is that education writ large the market of education is dramatically differentiated in the last 20 years. 25 years ago, the vast majority of students, and I speak more about the U.S. than about Canada, but I know there's some strong similarities as well. You either went to a traditional public school, to a tuition-paying private school, or to a parochial school. And that accounted for about 90% of all students. That market is radically differentiated and fractionated. And now families and students have many, many more choices. You can liken it to walking into your grocery store 30 years ago and you had a choice of 2 different types of spaghetti sauce, as Malcolm Gladwell talks about.
Yeah.
And now there's about 2 meters of shelf space for spaghetti sauce, or coffee. 20 years ago, there was a coffee shop and you drank coffee, and now you walk in just into Starbucks alone and there's 20 different varieties. So school leaders have to recognize that our customers have a lot of different choices. And if we don't adapt to what the needs and desires of our customers and what provides them value, they're going to go somewhere else.
Hey, Grant, if we're on that topic, you've seen more schools than probably 99.99% of our population. What do you think give me one benefit and one drawback of this abundance of choice in education?
I think there's a ton of benefits. The benefits are that, guess what? Students are humans. They're not little widgets and cookie cutters. They aren't all the same. And so thinking that we should always be teaching the same thing in the same manner to all these different students, it was never a good idea. And now we have the ability for customers to choose what's best for them. So that's, of course, there are all kinds of positives there. Are there drawbacks? I guess the way I would put that is, and I open Thrive with the comment, I'm an old geologist. I was a geologist in college, that at the time of the Cretaceous extinction 65 million years ago, when an asteroid hit the Earth, a whole lot of species died out. A whole lot of individuals and species died out. And some of those individuals and species that died out, I say that, you could be the most well-meaning, wonderful Tyrannosaurus Rex in the world, but you still died. During times of rapid change and rapid evolution, there's pain involved. There will be schools that don't make it through these type of evolutionary periods. It's not because they're bad people or because what they've done in the past is wrong. It's because they had an inability to adapt and change. And so certainly from that point of view, yeah, there's some downsides.
Yeah. I love that you're bringing what you said, the education market has changed dramatically, and that requires new skill sets for educators. And in particular, I think educator administrators or leaders. And in Thrive, you emphasize the importance of leaders to foster innovation within schools. What qualities, Grant, do you believe are essential for leaders to successfully drive change and encourage a culture of continuous improvement? What do leaders need to do? What qualities should they grow and develop in themselves?
Well, I think that's a question that you guys are answering in one way through many, many episodes of your podcast. And so I'm not going to try to list all those traits. So let me put it this way. I think in the past, people have felt that leadership came about because of a set of almost personal traits, or that was embedded in one person's DNA and not in somebody else's DNA. I was brought up that way. You were made to be a general, and you were made to be a sergeant, and you were made to be a private. And I think that that's a real sets up false choices. I think what we're demonstrating in education is that understanding the methodologies of organizational change is something that almost anybody can learn. We can learn these skills. It's more about skills than it is about traits. Sure, there are some people who are more extroverted, and we teach them how to create teams and empower people and all that. You'll be talking about all of that during your podcast. But people shouldn't feel that either was born with it or not. That's one of the reasons I wrote Thrive, and I've done the work that I have is that, no, this is stuff that you can learn just like you learned whatever you learned when you went to ed school at university or that sort of thing.
I love that. And just to elaborate on that too, I think as educators in the classroom, we have never known more than we do now about the brain and how it works. Like, we should be tapping into this knowledge. We've never known more about how schools operated. And in this book, you talk about you and your good colleague and friend, Bo Adams at Mount Vernon, about the curricular sort of the school operating system, so to speak. And I love that. One of the things that we've talked about on the podcast, and thanks for shouting that out, is about, how do you deal with challenges and to fail well. And on page 8 and 18, you talk about leadership in schools being able to fail well. What's your advice to leaders who are innovating when it comes to failing well? How do they set themselves up for it? How do they deal with it?
So first of all, I think one of the important paradigms that I set out in the book is to explain this term innovation. Innovation is merely another word for change, but change that is enacted in order to advance the value proposition of the school. So it's not just about changing anything for the sake of changing, but changing something that's going to enhance the value proposition of your organization so that your customers are more satisfied and you continue to attract customers in ways that align with your mission. So with that said, there are just a handful of inalienable, inevitable elements of change. And one of them is you cannot change without taking risks. If you're trying to change without taking a risk, you're not really changing, you're fuzzing around at the edges. But if you're trying to do something substantive, something that's going to really make a difference, it involves risk taking. And all of us know from the time we tried to walk to the time we tried to ride a bike to the time that some of us try to first hit a curveball in baseball, you're going to fail. And you learn by swinging the bat. And so leaders who create the conditions around which people not only are willing to accept failure, but sometimes reach out and in order to fail are those that really are going to adapt the best. And here's the way I put it for teachers especially. Every good teacher you and I know wants their own students to take a risk, get outside of their own comfort zone. We know that's where learning takes place. Well, guess who they model after? They model after us. And so if we aren't willing to take risks, they aren't going to. And so we have to model that for them and with them, and we're going to fail. And then we're going to learn from that, and we're going to do the next iteration. And that's what great change management looks like.
And I just want to call out too, because in your book, you have these amazing sort of call outs in the book. And this one on page 49, a good design process has two big results. One, it produces something that can change practice at the school in ways that will benefit users, that will build value. There's your definition of innovation. And number two, the process itself is the product. And I just want to emphasize too that is a mind shift. Sometimes schools are sometimes hell-bent on new projects or new strategic direction in accomplishing those. The process by which we do that is equally as important. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Thanks, Grant.
Listen, Grant, I can't shake the vision of a T-Rex since you've been talking about extinction. And so I'm thinking about schools and school leadership like this. So I'm an aspiring school leader or business leader. I've been told by Grant on this podcast that I need to be agile and adapt. And I've also been told that leadership, basically can be learned. They're learned skills over traits. A great man theory debunked in the 70s and 80s is not a real thing. So if I'm a listener to this podcast, I'm wondering to myself, where do I start? Like, what of all the leaders that, Grant, you've observed or read about or seen, what are the key skills that are required for success in this day and age of leadership where adaptability and agility are required?
So let me answer that this way, Jason, because that's really why I wrote Thrive. I'm the lucky guy that got to go around and visit a whole lot of schools and work with a whole lot of leaders, work through a whole lot of different types of problems aimed at modeling our schools for the future. And the great thing about educators is that we beg, borrow, and steal from each other. That's what we do. We share. And so my books have been involved in learning from many, many, many people on what works and what doesn't work. I think the reason I've been somewhat successful is that I spent several years reading everything I get my hand on about innovation and change management. But none of that had been written at that point in the mid 2000, 2010, 2000. None of that had been written about education. It had all been written about General Motors and Sony and Toyota and Silicon Valley and all that sort of thing. And so I think what I was able to bring to it was I had some of that knowledge base of what it takes to change an organization, both from doing research and actually living it at a school, but then also being an educator and having worked in a school for 15 years and had education in my DNA for longer than that. And so I think I will toot my own horn alongside. Now there are many folks who are, I don't want to say on this bandwagon, but have made the transition to understand that these essential models of change organization, which, by the way, one of the most fundamental models, John Cotter's model of change, which Garth, you and Justin introduced me to,
Yeah.
and we all figured out in about, I don't know, when was that, 2015? Oh, everything we've been talking about was actually something that Cotter was talking about 15 years ago. I'd never read Cotter before, but the basic model was the same. And so we don't find that there's a lot of mystery about what it takes to change an organization and how to go about doing it. It's really how to go about doing it within the language and structure of a school, of an education system. And that's why I wrote Thrive. And I'll tell you, by the time I sat down to write Thrive, you know how long it took me to write that book? It took me about 10 days to write the entire book, because I realized that in my slide decks and in my workshops and my
Yeah.
presentations for the preceding decade, I'd already put it all together. And all I had to do, and my CAIS work with Garth and Justin, I just finally wrote the chapters of what we'd all been talking about and working on. So if I'm an education leader out there, I think Thrive is a great primer, a way to start. And then there's lots of other resources and people that are working in this space now.
Yeah, Cotter, so good. Harvard Business School, how to protect innovation as a way of culture in an organization. Can't recommend that enough. Maybe we'll get him on the podcast, Jason.
Yeah, just call John Cotter and ask him if he'll come.
Yeah. I love what you said. It's in the delivery within the culture of education. It's in the delivery of the language and the shared understanding of what it means to be an educator. Because sometimes, you talked about the business of the school. Sometimes educators kind of bristle at, oh, this isn't a business. This is a lifelong work. This is a craft. This is an art. This is relationship. So it is important, particularly in independent schools, to consider that. And you've done a great job of it in Thrive. So if we are, Grant, a successful leader, and if we are working to change and innovate to meet the demands that the future asks of us, how do we know that we're working in the right direction?
I think it's a really important question, Garth, and it's one that when I work with boards and schools, especially boards, they say, okay, if we're going to make these changes, how do we know that we're getting better at it? And I mentioned a number of them in the book, a couple of them that come to mind. I think there are two sort of buckets. One are externally focused and one is internally focused. They're external tools like something called the Net Promoter Score, where it's been used by organizations and companies and corporations for decades all over the world. It essentially asks, are your customers increasingly or decreasingly willing to go out there and really advocate for you and say, I love this school? Because if they're not saying they love the school, they're not actually contributing very much to the word out on the street. So
I think you say in the Net Promoter Score, and we fill these out all the time. You say if you're not a 9 or 10, right, then basically you're not going to be promoting the school. It's the 9s and 10s that are the ones you can rely on to promote the school.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. Something like that is, and there's some other external metrics that are more market-related metrics that I bring up in the book that are traditionally used by for-profit companies and not education companies, but could easily apply for schools. But I think there's another sort of internal bucket, which is really if we've done our work, if we as a community have developed our North Star and decided what we want to do, where we want to go, where we think is going to be best for our students and the learning environment ecosystem going forward, then all we have to do is ask ourselves, what are we each as individuals? Ask our teachers, what are your goals for the year that are going to help you get toward that North Star? You're not going to achieve it this year, but what's going to help you trend in that direction? And then evaluate ourselves on how we're doing on those, and honestly evaluate, are we doing what we said we were going to do? And if we do that, if we constantly do that, we're constantly going to be moving toward what we set out as our North Star.
Yeah. Awesome.
Garth, I want to play something out with Grant here, if you don't mind. So, Grant, I'm a new leader, and I know that change is necessary, and I'm nervous about it because change is a really big thing in our organizations. Your sage wisdom is obviously very valuable, and I've got this moment with you where I get to ask you, what advice do you have for me as I'm thinking about this change initiative or this innovative mindset? What are you telling me that I should be focusing on as a school leader?
I'm telling you that you want to, at the outset, learn from both your internal and external communities what it is that your school community values most. Not within the context of what they've been told about getting good test scores or how they're going to get into university. And that's what do they truly value most? What does great learning look like? At the end of the day, every school is about we have one shared thing, and that is great learning. I would argue, yes, there's a new set about purpose and that sort of thing, but we're about great learning opportunities. And creating the conditions around which our parents, our students, and our teachers, our staff can all contribute to that. What does great learning look like? And then saying, okay, now we've identified what great learning looks like. Let's summarize this. Let's hone it down. We start with a big wide funnel and we narrow it down because we can't do everything. We know we can't be good at everything, but let's all agree on a few fundamental things that are the most important. And then you hit the fundamental question. Are we going to do it? And we either have to get together and make that pinky swear that we said this was the most important stuff to us. We're going to do it, even though we recognize it's going to be uncomfortable. There will be times when it's uncomfortable for us because that's embedded in the process of change. Or, just kidding, we're not going to do it. In which case, what are we talking about here? And the vast majority of educators who I've met said, no, when we've got to that point where we really understand what's most important to us and our community, we have to do it, even if it's going to involve some discomfort. And then as a leader now, you have a mandate and support of the majority of the people because they were involved. They were the ones that said, this is where we want to go. It's not you telling them this is where we want to go. They said this is where we want to go. And now it's up to you to create those conditions to allow that to happen and to keep reminding them, yes, it might be uncomfortable, but I'm going to help you through that discomfort.
Hey, listen, Grant, can I just feed that back to you? Because I think it was so valuable for aspiring leads. Is it accurate for me to say that a leader's job doesn't start with vision, it starts with empathy? And then moves to vision.
I was taught that the good leader was Teddy Roosevelt. I'm going to charge up the hill and yell and scream, and you're going to come along behind me because I've got the vision of what's at the top of the hill. And there really were two models of change in the past, and they were both wrong. The one was top down, which was, I've got the vision, I'm going to charge up the hill, and I'm going to bring you along behind me. The other one was, it was bottom up. I'm going to encourage people across all levels very organically to make change. And the assumption is that will percolate up and across the system over time, which it often does, but it takes consistency of leadership, which most education systems don't have consistency of leadership. And it takes a long time. And what Garth and Justin and I have been preaching in our work with schools is the Bright method is inside out, which is essentially creating a design system, which involves, it is a process that is, what do we say, Garth? It is radically transparent and inclusive. Those are the two most important parts of it. And I am creating the conditions around which a large group of people can get together and really start designing what our North Star is going to be, and then designing how we get there. And that works. Full stop. Yeah. It works. It just flat out works. And we've seen it work. And it's not just in education, but that's essentially what, others like John Cotter have been preaching, we have been preaching for decades because it works.
Yeah. And as a new aspiring leader, all of these things, this is the book for you because Grant's mentioned this a couple of times. What's your value proposition? What's your North Star, your guiding lights, etc. This work is, I'm just going to read one of the things, Grant, from what you write. If you want your school to survive and thrive in this evolutionary future, you have to understand something that most educators have never had to learn. Marketing guru Seth Godin puts it in the simplest possible terms. The heart and soul of a thriving enterprise, read school, is the irrational pursuit of becoming irresistible. And Grant, you've said in this podcast, you said the world has changed, but so too has what it demands of schools. And in here too, I'm not going to quote it verbatim, but basically you're saying successful schools have a waiting list, until the moment they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are you going to do? You're not at these schools aren't necessarily agile enough. So listening, putting that out there. And I love what Jason said, start with empathy. Like, you've got to ask these questions and then move to vision. It's just such a powerful picture of school leadership and change leadership. So Grant, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
I got to thank you for pulling out that Seth Godin quote. It's the priceless quote in that book. I guess if I'm proud about something about this book, it's that I took that concept and I put it into the language and gave educators the tools that they will understand, as opposed to somebody making spaghetti sauce, and the appendices that are full of all the different workshop of type things that we've done together and that I've done by myself. Here's all the tools, folks.
Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The tools are there for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Again, thank you. I mean, listeners, you can hear his passion, like 30 plus years in this business. He's done things that, as Jason said, are enviable for all of us. Imagine visiting all of these schools and taking that time to really digest it and then articulate it in ways that can cause real change. So, Grant, your dedication to leading by example, fostering a culture of innovation, it's remarkable. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me on and a chance to share and chat with you guys.
Yeah.
And thanks, Grant. It's like meeting a hero today, and I'm certainly not let down. This has been exhilarating, and I can't wait to listen to this back and think more about what you've brought forward. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Lassoing Leadership as always.
Yeah. So there it is, folks. So what questions do you have about this book? How can we try and tackle this next week for you? The good news is that Grant is going to be coming back onto this podcast because Grant has a new book. Grant, can you give us a tease of what the new book is?
Yes, I spent over a period of 18 months, I spent 30 weeks on the road by myself, driving around America and a little bit into Canada, 20,000 miles across 33 states and one province, interviewing people from what I believe are undervoiced and overlooked subcultures across our continent, asking them about what are some of the most important values and wisdom that they've acquired from previous generations, from their communities and cultures, that we're not doing a good job of passing on to the next generation, and secondarily, why at least in America, perhaps in Canada as well, are we so angry and divided today, and what can we do about that? It's been the most extraordinary learning opportunity of my life. Took a big chunk of my time over a 2-year period, and I think the book is going to be extraordinary as well, and I hope within a month or so we'll have a publication schedule for you.
Beautiful. GrantLichtman.com. You can learn more about it there. It's right on your website.
Wisdom Road. It's on my landing page of GrantLichtman.com.
Yeah.
All right, Garth. Should we ask the obligatory Ted Lasso question? Why don't you jump in and take it away?
Yeah, last question is to me. So based on what you know about the show, Grant, we're going to make a massive pivot here to Ted Lasso. Based on the show, can you comment on whether or not Ted Lasso was a great leader?
He was a great leader, and the 3 traits that popped up to me when you sent me that question. Number one, I think he created conditions for others to succeed, people who others might not have thought were going to succeed, or they didn't think that they themselves would succeed. The second one is remarkable humility. That just oozes through his character. And the third one is humor. He's always willing to smile and tell a joke, oftentimes about his own failures and his own failings, both as a leader and as knowledgeable about soccer and other things. So those are the 3 that occurred to me quickly when I saw that note of yours.
Beautiful.
That's amazing, Grant. To harness people's ability to, succeed, show humility, and have humor. The 3 H's of Grant Lichtman's Ted Lasso assessment. We've got it right there. Grant, I really appreciate you being here. This has been an incredible conversation. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Thanks very much. And I believe I'm supposed to end with your tagline. Until next time, keep leading the Lasso way.
All right. Thank you, Grant. Thanks, listeners.
Everybody.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Step up to the mic. It's time to play Lassoing Leadership. Ted's world, let's begin from AFC, Richmond Spiel to your day-to-day. Lassoing leadership's here to stay. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the show. With lessons from Ted we'll learn.